Hello and welcome back to the third video of our Git series where we will discuss using branches within Git to stream your software development workflow. This lesson builds on some concepts covered in the previous video where we discussed basic operations and workflow within Git, so if you haven't watched that yet, please look in the description below for the link to the previous video and watch that first. Now, in the previous video, we discussed how you could make changes to the main line of code using git commit, git push, etc. The thing about the main line of code is that you typically want this to remain in a good state at all times. Now, this is especially important when working with a large team where many people might depend on this main line of code and require it to be functional at all times. As such, all the commits to the main line of code that we're representing with these black circles, they should be complete, tested, and validated changes. Now, this raises a little bit of a paradox. In order to move the code base forward and to add new features, you actually need to experiment and change things, but you don't want these changes to be merged into the main code line until they're all complete. So to solve this, Git and many other version controls have the notion of branches. Branches are a concept where you diverge from the main code line in order to develop new features in a safe, relatively isolated environment. This allows you to test out changes and to make modifications without potentially compromising the integrity of the main code line. Now, as we've indicated in this graphic, the main code line is typically referred to as the master branch. Now, if you recall from our previous video, the code base we're working with is a simple collection of MATLAB functions to do some simple mathematical operations. In this video, let's add a branch called multiplication, which we're going to use to add some functions and features to implement simple multiplication in our code base. You can now work on this branch by making commits and pushes, etc., while the master branch also moves forward simultaneously. So, the commands associated with this workflow are shown in the table below. Now, the first three commands are used to create branches. In this case, we first pull from the remote repo to the master branch to ensure we have all the latest changes on our local repo, and then we create a branch and then switch to it so all our new development will be performed on this new feature branch. The last two commands are ones that we use when we're making changes to the new feature branch. Notice that these pull and push commands are very similar to what we've looked at before, but we are not pulling and pushing from master. Instead, we're pulling and pushing to the new feature branch. So why don't we examine this workflow with a concrete example? All right, so let's go ahead and just start up Git Shell here, and I'll drag it over to the screen, and also we'll try to keep the commands visible in the bottom so we can see the actual syntax and then an example of how we're going to do it here in Git Shell. So the first thing to start off is we need to navigate to the MyMATLAB repository, and if you remember from our previous video, I think we stuck that in local Git repositories, and then it was in a folder called MyMATLAB. And here we are. So if I take a look at this directory, we see this is the status of the repository right now, and now we actually make a note here that this master here is actually telling us which branch we're on. We are on the master branch right now. For a little bit more insight into this, why don't I open up GitHub, the web page interface, and I'll go to this repository online here, and we'll see that there's actually a tab here for branches, and right now we only have one branch. That makes sense because we've never created one before. So if you really want to see that from Git Shell, you could also say git branch -a, and this will show us all the branches here, and the green starred one here which says master means that's the branch I have on my local repository, and that's the one that's currently checked out. And we also see that there's only the master branch here on the remote repository again, which lines up with what we're seeing on the web page, just a single branch. You know what, let's see if I can just minimize this a little bit so again we can see all of the changes here and all of the syntax. So let's go ahead and get started and create this this new branch for the multiplication feature. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to pull from origin down to our master branch, right? That's the first thing we want to do, is we want to get all the local all the changes that may be on the remote repo onto our local repo. It seems like we're already up to date, so we don't actually need to do that. So now at this point, what I want to do is let's actually create a branch here. So I'm going to say git branch and then I name the branch. Let's call this thing multiplication here, okay? And when I enter that, what I've done is I've actually created the multiplication branch, but I've only done it on my local repo. So again, if you want to see that, if I say git branch -a, you now see that there's the multiplication branch here and the master branch. And again, I'm still working on the master branch. You can see that it's green, it has a star next to it, and it says master down here. Again, the remote repository, we have actually not created that branch on the remote, it's only local. So again, if I come here to GitHub and I hit refresh, I'll still only see one branch here, right? There's just the master branch. Okay, so now what do I want to do? Why don't I switch to the multiplication branch so that all of the work I do will be on the new branch, not on master. So I need to now do git checkout, and then the name of the new feature branch, which in this case is multiplication. So I've now switched, and you can actually see here, I've switched from master now to the multiplication branch. Again, if I say git branch -a, you see now multiplication is the branch that's in green and has the star next to it. So I am now working on the multiplication branch here rather than the master branch, and I can now safely make these changes on this specific branch. So why don't I go ahead and do that? So in order to do that, why don't I go ahead and I will navigate to where this is in Windows Explorer here, File Explorer. Here I am. Why don't I just go ahead, let's create a new MATLAB function here. So I'm going to just go ahead and copy, paste this, and let's call this thing my multiplication function. And we can open this in MATLAB and make some changes. Alright, so let me drag MATLAB over here so we can see what's going on, and let's go ahead and edit this function here in MATLAB. Again, we want to call this my multiplication function, and this is a function that simply multiplies two numbers, and this should be x times y, and let's go ahead and save this, and I think that's fairly all right for our purposes. So if I come back over here to Git here and I do a git status, I see a file's been added. Let's go ahead and add that to the staging area, and let's go ahead and commit that. Adding a multiplication function on the multiplication branch. And there. I think that's now committed. Let's go ahead and now push this now to the remote repo. Now, the thing to notice here is as soon as I go ahead and do this, if I go ahead and say git, you know what we should actually do? For good practice, let's first pull from the multiplication. This actually won't work because that multiplication branch doesn't exist on the remote repo yet, but again, it's always good practice, I think, to get into the habit of pulling before you push here. So what we're ready to do now is we're ready to now push all of these locally committed changes up to the remote repo, aka origin, and now though we have to move these to the multiplication branch here on the remote repo. So now when I hit enter here, what will be happening is the branch will be moved to the remote repository, and I should be able to see it show up here on the website. So let's go ahead, hit enter here. Let's push that up to the remote repo, and once that happens, let's go ahead here. Great. And if I come and refresh the website, we now see we've got two branches here, the master here and the multiplication one that we just put up on the website here. For just one more view of what's going on here, you know, it might be interesting to look at the GitHub desktop application here. So let's just go ahead and drag that over. And as you can see, this is interesting. Again, we saw that master was up here, but we just created this branch like we saw in the previous graphic, and we are now working on the multiplication branch. So if we go ahead and make more changes to this, so for example, let's bring MATLAB back over here, and let's say I want to, let's put a little note here for some documentation purposes. And let's go ahead and save this, and now we'll get this out of the way. We can still go back, take a look at this, git status. Yep, that was modified. Let's go ahead and add that to the staging area, and we'll commit this again. Adding some documentation, right? And let's go ahead and sync that up to the server. So we'll go ahead and do again a git pull from origin to the multiplication, just in case anyone else is working on this branch simultaneously. I highly doubt that since we just created it. But again, this is good habit to pull first before we push. Now, though, we see we're able to pull from multiplication here because it exists on the remote repo, and we're up to date. So since we're up to date, we are safe to git push up to the origin to this multiplication branch. And if we do that, that will go up. I will come over here to the GitHub desktop app. We see another dot get filled in here. And again, if we come up to the website, we again see that, oh, changes were made here on the multiplication branch. So at this point, what we've done is we have branched off the main code line and we've created this multiplication branch and now are doing all of our work on that branch. So let's see, what's the next step? I'm going to move Git Shell and the Git desktop application out of the way here so we can take a look at what's going on next. All right, so the next thing we want to do here is first, let's get rid of this table of commands because I think we saw how all these were used. Let's think about the next step in the process. So the next thing we want to do here is we actually want to take all of these changes that we've made on the multiplication branch, and once we've tested and validated them and been sure that they work, we actually want to merge these changes back onto the master branch. In other words, we want master to be updated with all of the good features and new functionality that we've been working on the multiplication branch here. So again, the commands to do that here are down in the table below. So the process here, if you just follow this table kind of from top to bottom here, is first, we are now going to switch back to the master branch. That's what the git checkout command is going to do. Then the next command is we are actually going to merge the new feature branch back into the master branch, which is the one we've moved ourselves to. And then, again, all of that is going to be done on our local repository, so we are going to need to push all of these changes back up to the remote repository using this paradigm where we are going to first pull, make sure we're up to date, and if everything's up to date, we can then push it up to the master branch. So again, let's look at an example of this. All right, so let's bring Git Shell back into the picture here so we can actually implement this example here. And you know what's going to be very interesting is let's also bring Windows Explorer over here with our repository here so we can see some interesting behavior that happens when we're switching between these branches. So again, in Git Shell, we can quickly see that we're on the multiplication branch. To doubly check, we can say git branch-a. Shows us all the branches, and again, the green one with the star next to it is multiplication, so that's the branch we're currently on. According to our workflow, the first thing to do in order to merge all of these changes back onto the master branch is we need to switch to the master branch. So I'm going to type in git checkout master. Now, when I hit enter here, what we're actually doing is we're switching from the multiplication branch where we had added this function or this file here, and we're going to switch back to the master branch, which if you think about this, that didn't have that file in here, right? So when I hit enter, you can actually watch this file go away in Windows Explorer because I'm switching back to the master branch. So let's go ahead and hit enter there, and there it goes. It's gone because now Git has changed all of my files back to the master branch and the state where I left it here. Okay, now the whole point of doing this here is I want to now merge all of those nice features from the multiplication branch into the master branch. So what I need to do is I need to say git merge multiplication, and this is going to merge everything we did in the multiplication branch into the master branch. So if you watch carefully in Windows Explorer, we should hopefully see that file, the my multiplication function, show back up because I'm merging all of the changes into the current branch. So let's go ahead back to Git Shell, hit enter here, and hopefully if things work out, oops, sorry, did I hit enter? Let's try this again. Enter, there it goes. Here we are. Here's the my multiplication function. It showed back up. Perfect. So now the last part of this step here is, again, all of this has happened here on my local repository. I need to get all of these merges and changes and everything I've been doing on my local repository up to the remote repository. So again, as good practice, I'm going to pull from the remote repository to the master branch to make sure maybe someone has worked on this master branch, and I might need to incorporate those edits before I push mine up to the server. So again, let's pull here, and luckily we were lucky, nobody has worked on master since we've made these changes, so we're up to date. So we should be clear and ready to push all of these changes back up to the remote repository. So I'm going to now git push to the origin, and I'm going to push master, and if we do that, things should go well. And again, let's go ahead and bring up the web page for it, and everything worked, it looked like. And if I make this a little bigger so we can see what's going on here, let's go ahead and refresh this here. And actually, let's come over here to the code here, and we can actually see here on the branch that we're on, let's look at master. Master actually has the my multiplication function, because it has all of the changes from that multiplication branch merged into master. So this is perfect. At this point, we have all of the work that we have done in multiplication branch merged into the master branch here. So the last thing that we need to do here is we actually probably need to now delete the multiplication branch both on the local and the remote repository, because it's done. It's served its purpose, and in order to make sure we don't have this explosion of all of these dead branches, we need to do a little pruning and clip them and delete them and trim things back to the where we only have the master branch. So let's take a look at that now. All right, so again, let's remove this table of commands here, because what we now want to do is actually get rid of this multiplication branch completely, both on the local and the remote repository. So again, let's bring up a series of commands that are going to be useful for this workflow. We see that the git branch with the -d argument, and then you name the branch, is going to allow us to delete whatever branch you name here from the local repository, and then all we need to do is also, remember, delete it from the remote repository as well here. So again, let's go ahead and bring Git Shell back into the picture so we can actually type in a few of these commands here. So again, let's check the branches. Git branch -a. We see that on our local repository, we have the multiplication branch still, and we have master. And on the remote repository, we have both multiplication and master. So the first thing I want to do here is let's go ahead and git branch -d multiplication. What this is going to do is it should delete that branch from my local repository. So if I enter this, yes, that was successfully deleted. If I look at git branch -a, you see that it's gone from my local repository, but it is still there on the remote repository. Again, if you really want to see that, let's come back to the web page here. And again, if I refresh this, there are still two branches lying around here. We still have the multiplication branch on the remote repository. So let's go ahead and do that second command to get rid of it on the remote repository as well. So I need to git push origin --delete, and I want to get rid of the multiplication branch on the remote repository. So let's go ahead and execute that command and give it a second here, and it should now be gone. So again, let's go git branch -a. Yes, it's gone from Git Shell, and if I come to the website and hit refresh, we should see multiplication has gone away. So great. With that, I think that shows pretty much how to do branches. Just to reiterate and show that, it's really not that cumbersome an operation, let's just go ahead and do one more example. Maybe let's do a division branch using all of the commands we talked about earlier, and show that it really is fairly simple to start up a new branch, do a little bit of work, merge that branch back into the master line, and then clean up the branches that you had just created. All right, so let's take a look at that now. All right, so I've cleared my list of commands here, so I have a nice clean Git terminal to get started with. And you know what? Let's also put the Windows Explorer on this side and get a little organized so we can see all of the things that are going on here. So if you remember, our workflow was first to go ahead and pull from origin to make sure our master branch is up to date, and that looks like it's great. So since it's up to date, let's go ahead and create a new branch. Let's call it division. And let's check to make sure that was created. And there's the division. Great. So now let's go ahead and switch to this branch, right? Git checkout division. All right. So now we're on the division branch. So we can now go ahead and make changes safely on this branch. Let's go ahead and copy this. We'll paste it here. Let's call it my division function.m. And again, let's go ahead and make some edits to this in MATLAB. Let's go ahead and create this, and we'll go my division function. This function simply divides two numbers. So let's go like that. X divided by y. We'll save this, get them out of the way. Let's go ahead and check the status. Yep, there are some unstaged changes, so let's go ahead and add those files to the staging area and go ahead and commit these, adding a division function. And now let's go ahead and push them up to the remote repository, to the division branch. Again, let's get in the habit of going git pull origin division, right? Pull to the branch that we are working on. But again, this is not going to work because the remote repository doesn't have this branch. So again, this is going to choke a little bit, but that's fine here. We were expecting that. So let's go ahead now and push this to the remote repository. And that should go up here. And again, just to check here, let's go ahead and pull up the GitHub website here. Come here to my MATLAB. And again, now we've got two branches because we just pushed the division branch up. Perfect. So let's say we're happy with all of these changes. We can make more if we want, but now let's say they're fine and we're ready to merge the division branch into master. So again, we're going to now first switch to the master branch here. Oh, sorry, I should say git check out master, right? So now we're on the master branch here. Again, watch that file go away here because we've switched everything back to master. And now I want to go ahead and merge division branch into my master branch. So now as soon as I hit enter, we should see that file come back. It does in Windows Explorer. Here it is. It just showed back up again. So what I'm now free to do here is let's go ahead and pull from origin to master to make sure master is up to date before we try to push it up to the server. It is up to date, so let's go ahead now and push the master branch up to the server or the remote repository. And things should be great here. Yep, it went up, no problem here. So now the division branch has served its purpose. We did some development in that branch. We merged that branch back into master, so it's no longer needed. Let's go ahead and delete the division branch from the local repository. It is now gone. Let's double check. Let's say git branch-a. Yep, it is gone from the local repository, but it is still up there in the remote repository, so I better get rid of that as well. So I'm going to git push origin --delete the division branch here. And with that, that should be everything, because now as soon as this completes, let's come back to our website, and what we should see here is, yep, we are back down to one branch here, just master. And if we take a look at it, everything is great because we now have both the multiplication and the division functionality that are now safely and securely and robustly integrated into the master branch. All right. So I think that's it here. So that hopefully will tell us a little bit and show you how you can use branches to streamline your software development workflow here and allow working with larger teams and make that a lot more efficient. So again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in a future one shortly. Thank you so much.